Homecoming. David exhaled slowly as he made his way through the bustling airport terminal. The weight of his duffel bag slung over his shoulder was a constant reminder of the countless miles he had traveled, the adventures and challenges faced during his latest deployment. His fatigued eyes scanned the crowded space, taking in the mix of hurried travelers, their heads down and preoccupied with their own lives. He, however, was calm. Tired, yes, but at peace. It felt good to be back home after months spent overseas, risking his life for a cause greater than himself. Each step he took was filled with purpose, though his movements were a little slower than usual. The ache in his muscles and the stiffness in his legs were telltale signs of a body that had been through more than most could imagine. Still, he carried himself with a sense of pride. His uniform freshly pressed and crisp, standing out amid the sea of casual travelers. It was a symbol of his dedication and sacrifice, and while he was accustomed to the attention it attracted, today he hoped for a quieter, more personal homecoming. David held his first-class ticket tightly in his hand, feeling the paper's crispness as he approached the check-in desk. It was a small luxury, one he rarely indulged in, but after the intense months he had spent serving his country, he felt deserving of this brief moment of comfort. He could already envision himself settling into the plush seat, relaxing as the plane soared through the clouds, leaving behind the stress and danger of his recent experiences. As he made his way toward the security checkpoint, he caught sight of a family waving goodbye to a soldier, a younger man, fresh-faced and full of enthusiasm. The soldier's family embraced him tightly, tears and laughter mingling as they celebrated his return. David couldn't help but smile. This was a moment he had often dreamed of. He recalled his own family, the warmth of their hugs, and the comfort of being enveloped in their love. It reminded him of why he served, those moments of connection, safety, and home. With a sense of determination, David passed through security, a routine he had become accustomed to. The TSA agents acknowledged him with nods of respect. Some even offered a "thank you for your service." He returned their smiles, appreciating the recognition but never seeking it. He was simply doing his job, just as they were. After navigating through the terminal, David finally arrived at the boarding gate. The airline staff called for first-class passengers, and he approached the desk with a sense of anticipation. "Welcome aboard, sir." A cheerful attendant greeted him. "We appreciate your service. Enjoy your flight." David nodded appreciatively and walked onto the plane, the interior beautifully appointed with spacious seats and soft lighting. He took a deep breath, letting the sense of calm wash over him. This was it. This was the moment he had been looking forward to, a few hours of peace before reuniting with family. However, as he made his way to his seat, he noticed a commotion ahead. A woman, dressed in a chic but casual outfit, was standing in the aisle, her arms crossed defiantly. She was arguing with the flight attendant, her voice rising with indignation. David couldn't hear the specifics but could see the irritation etched on her face. His instinct was to keep his head down and move to his seat, but something about the situation drew his attention. As he neared, he realized the source of the conflict. The woman was refusing to allow a fellow passenger, an elderly man with a cane, to pass by her and take his seat. David felt a pang of irritation at the scene unfolding before him. It was unacceptable behavior, especially on a day that was supposed to be about coming home and celebrating unity. The flight attendant tried to explain the seating arrangement, her voice calm and steady, attempting to de-escalate the situation. But the woman seemed intent on creating a scene. "I don't want to sit next to him," she declared loudly, pointing at the elderly man. "You should find him another seat. It's unacceptable." David paused, weighing his options. He could either continue to his seat and ignore the growing tension or intervene. The military had taught him about leadership and standing up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. Taking a deep breath, he decided to step in. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice steady but respectful. "I think we should all be able to sit together peacefully." That man deserves his seat just as much as anyone else. The woman turned to him, her eyes narrowing. "And you are?" she challenged, her tone dripping with disdain. "I'm David," he replied, his calm demeanor unshaken. "A soldier, and I believe that we should treat each other with respect, especially on a day like today." The atmosphere shifted as other passengers began to take notice. David could feel their eyes on him, a mix of curiosity and support. The flight attendant looked relieved, grateful for his intervention. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, stepping back slightly to allow David to stand beside her. The woman's expression twisted into one of anger and disbelief. "You're just a soldier. You think that gives you the right to tell me what to do?" she snapped, her voice rising again. David felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. This was not the homecoming he had envisioned. "No, it doesn't," he said, his voice calm. "But treating others with kindness and dignity is a value we should all hold." As he spoke, he felt a surge of support from the other passengers. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged glances, silently commending his courage. David hoped that, despite the tension, this moment could transform into something meaningful, a chance to remind everyone aboard of the importance of empathy and respect. The woman scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Whatever. I'm not sitting next to him," she said defiantly. "I'll take my business elsewhere." "Ma'am," the flight attendant interjected gently, "there are no other seats available. We all deserve to travel comfortably and respectfully. Please consider the situation." David watched as the woman's resolve began to crack. He could see her processing the reactions around her. The mounting pressure of being the sole antagonist in a growing chorus of support for the elderly man. The discomfort in the air was palpable, but David held his ground, hoping that her heart might soften. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the woman huffed in frustration. "Fine. Just whatever. I'll sit down," she muttered, begrudgingly moving aside to allow the elderly man to take his seat. David felt a wave of relief wash over him. As the elderly man settled in, he turned to David with a grateful smile. "Thank you, young man. You didn't have to do that." David smiled back, feeling the warmth in his heart. "It was the right thing to do," he replied. "We're all in this together." The flight attendant approached, her demeanor now relaxed. "Thank you for your intervention, David. It can be difficult to manage situations like that." David shrugged. "It's just about treating everyone with respect. I know that all too well." With the situation finally resolved, David took his seat, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. The plane began to taxi down the runway, and he allowed himself to relax as the familiar rumble of the engines surrounded him. He could hear the chatter of passengers, the occasional laugh, and the sound of someone flipping through a magazine. But in that moment of quiet reflection, David realized that this experience was only the beginning of a much larger journey. The confrontation had revealed more than just a moment of tension. It had exposed the underlying biases and challenges that lingered beneath the surface of society. How would his calm response ripple through the lives of those on the plane? And what lessons could emerge from this unexpected encounter? As the plane took off into the sky, David looked out the window at the clouds drifting by, hopeful for the change this moment could inspire. Little did he know that this encounter would not only impact the lives of those aboard, but also set in motion a series of events that would challenge perceptions and foster understanding, leading to a journey of redemption that would ultimately change him and the woman he confronted forever. Unfolding shadows. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, David settled into his seat, allowing the hum of the engines to envelop him in a comforting cocoon. He closed his eyes for a moment, reflecting on the confrontation with Layla. Despite the satisfaction of standing up for what was right, the tension of the situation lingered in his mind. He hoped that her outburst was an isolated incident, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that it symbolized deeper societal issues. The elderly man seated next to him, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat, breaking David's reverie. "That was quite a scene back there," he remarked, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. "You handled it with grace, son." David smiled modestly. "Thank you, sir. I just couldn't sit back and watch someone be disrespected like that. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity." Mr. Thompson nodded in agreement. "It's good to see young people like you standing up for what's right. Sometimes it takes courage to challenge the status quo." As they chatted, David learned that Mr. Thompson was a retired schoolteacher, a man who had dedicated his life to educating young minds. They shared stories of their experiences, David's deployments, and Mr. Thompson's years in the classroom, filled with moments of triumph and challenge alike. The bond they formed during the flight was palpable, a reminder of the connections that could be made through shared values and respect. Meanwhile, Leela sat several rows behind them, her mind a swirling tempest of emotions. The flight attendant had checked on her a few times, but she had barely acknowledged her, instead staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. She had expected her fellow passengers to rally to her side, yet David's calm demeanor and the support of the others had turned the tide against her. The discomfort in her chest intensified, twisting into frustration. Leela was not accustomed to being challenged, especially in public. Growing up in a well-off neighborhood, she had always been taught to expect the best. In her mind, first class was a privilege, one she had earned through her hard work and connections. But now, the reality of her entitlement was hitting her harder than the turbulence that occasionally rocked the plane. Her thoughts drifted back to the encounter. Why had she reacted the way she did? The old man hadn't done anything to her. He had simply been trying to take his seat. Yet, she had felt an instinctive revulsion, a deep-seated bias that she had never fully acknowledged. Was it her upbringing? The way society conditioned her to view others? Leila had never thought of herself as prejudiced, yet here she was, manifesting behavior she had always disdained in others. As the flight progressed, the plane entered smooth cruising altitude, and David felt himself beginning to relax. He glanced over at Mr. Thompson, who was now engrossed in a book, and allowed himself to drift into thoughts about his family. He couldn't wait to be home with them, sharing stories of his adventures, and feeling their warmth again. Yet, as the hours passed, he found himself unable to shake the incident from his mind. He had never intended for his return to be marked by confrontation. He simply wanted to enjoy a peaceful flight, but he realized that this moment would not only affect Leela, but also open the door to a more profound understanding of the biases and judgments people carry with them. Suddenly, the seatbelt sign flickered on, indicating turbulence ahead. The cabin crew prepared for the rough ride, and passengers were instructed to return to their seats. As the plane bounced lightly in the air, Leela's heart raced, not from fear of flying, but from the realization of her actions. She felt a mixture of anger and shame that bubbled up like an unwelcome tide, crashing over her. Just then, a soft voice broke through her thoughts. "Excuse me, ma'am." It was the flight attendant again, checking on her. "Can I get you something to drink?" Leela looked up, momentarily caught off guard. "Oh, water, please," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As she waited, her mind raced with thoughts of how to reconcile her behavior. Part of her wanted to confront David, to challenge him, but another part felt a gnawing need to understand why she had reacted the way she did. The airplane's cabin, despite being filled with other passengers, felt like a private space where her reflections could take center stage. When the flight attendant returned with her water, Leela took a long sip, attempting to ground herself. She observed David from a distance, seeing him now engaged in light conversation with Mr. Thompson. His demeanor was warm and approachable, contrasting sharply with her own self-imposed isolation. A pang of regret washed over her, and she wrestled with the thought of approaching him, but her pride held her back. As they neared the halfway point of the flight, David decided to stand and stretch his legs, needing a brief respite from sitting. He took a casual stroll down the aisle, nodding to passengers and offering polite smiles. It was during this walk that he glanced at Leela, her expression caught between introspection and defiance. "Hey," he said, stopping near her seat. I just wanted to say that I hope we can all move past what happened earlier. We all have our moments, right? Leela felt the heat rise in her cheeks, torn between defensiveness and the longing to express her remorse. David raised a hand, stopping her before she could spiral into an explanation. It's okay. We're all human, and sometimes we let our emotions get the best of us. He offered her a kind smile, a gesture of understanding that disarmed her defenses. Her mouth opened to speak, but words escaped her. Instead, she just nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of vulnerability. "I'm sorry," she finally managed to say. "I didn't mean to. I don't know why I reacted that way." David looked at her with sincere curiosity. "What made you feel that way?" Leela hesitated, wrestling with her thoughts. "I guess I just—" She paused, taking a deep breath. "I was raised to think that some people don't belong in certain places. It's something I've never really questioned." David nodded, allowing her to continue. "And today was a moment where that belief was challenged." "Yes," Leela admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "It was embarrassing. I never thought of myself as prejudiced. I just didn't want to sit next to him. Sometimes our upbringing influences how we view others, but that doesn't define who we are," David offered gently. "Recognizing it is the first step." As their eyes locked, something shifted within Leela. She saw in David not just a soldier, but a man who had faced adversity, who had dedicated his life to serving others. It was as if his calmness and strength illuminated the shadows in her heart, pushing her to confront her biases. "I want to understand," she confessed, her voice softer now. "I really do, but I'm scared of what that means for me." David smiled warmly. "It's okay to be scared. Change is never easy, but it's necessary. It starts with conversations like this, admitting our faults and working to be better." In that moment, as the plane soared above the clouds, Leela felt an unexpected sense of hope. Perhaps this encounter could be the catalyst for something more profound, a journey toward understanding and growth. She realized that David's presence and his willingness to engage could serve as a guiding light, illuminating the path she needed to take. "Thank you for talking to me," she said earnestly. "I appreciate it. I didn't expect to find this kind of support today." David chuckled lightly. "We're all on this journey together, Leela. And who knows, maybe this is the start of something new for both of us." As the flight continued, they exchanged stories, slowly breaking down the walls that had initially separated them. Leila shared her background, her struggles with expectations, and her desire to fit in. David listened, offering insight into his own experiences and the lessons learned from his time in the military. With each shared moment, they began to peel back the layers of their respective lives, revealing the insecurities and challenges that had shaped them. Their conversation shifted from uncomfortable truths to shared laughter, transforming the atmosphere around them. By the time the flight began its descent, a bond had formed between them, a tentative friendship rooted in understanding and acceptance. They both recognized that this encounter was just the beginning of a larger journey, one that would require ongoing reflection, growth, and, ultimately, change. As the plane touched down and the cabin lights flickered back on, David felt a surge of optimism. He had not only stood up for a fellow passenger, but had also engaged in a meaningful dialogue that had the potential to inspire change. Leela, for her part, had taken the first step toward confronting her biases, guided by David's example of compassion and strength. Little did they know that this moment would serve as a pivotal point in their lives, setting in motion a series of events that would further intertwine their paths and challenge their perspectives on identity, privilege, and the power of understanding. The ripple effect. As the plane taxied to the gate, David felt an unfamiliar excitement bubbling within him. He had spent months away from home, but this time, the journey back felt different. It wasn't just about returning to his family. It was also about the unexpected connection he had made with Lila. Their conversation had ignited something within him, a determination to foster understanding and challenge prejudices, not just for himself but for others. Once the plane had fully stopped and the seatbelt sign flickered off, passengers began to gather their belongings and prepare to disembark. David felt a sense of reluctance, not wanting to end the moment they had shared. He turned back to Leela, who was still in her seat, lost in thought. "Hey," he said, catching her attention. "Are you okay?" Leela looked up, a flicker of gratitude crossing her face. "I am, actually. Thank you for asking. I didn't expect this flight to change my perspective so much." "Change often comes when we least expect it," David replied, a smile on his face. "I hope you continue to reflect on what we talked about." As they made their way off the plane, David's heart raced with anticipation. He couldn't wait to see his family, to embrace them after such a long absence. But as he walked through the airport terminal, the lingering thoughts of his encounter with Layla remained at the forefront of his mind. What if this was the start of a much larger conversation, one that could ripple outward, influencing others beyond the confines of their flight? After a warm reunion with his family, filled with hugs and laughter, David found himself in a quiet moment with his younger sister, Jasmine. She had always looked up to him, admiring his dedication to serving in the military. As they sat together, David couldn't help but share the transformative experience from the flight. "Jasmine, I had the most incredible encounter on my way back," he began, recounting the story of Leela and the confrontation. His sister listened intently, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Wow, David, that's amazing. You stood up for someone who was treated poorly?" she asked, clearly impressed. "Yeah, but it's more than that. It made me realize how important it is to have these conversations, even when they're uncomfortable." Lila seemed willing to reflect on her behavior, and it gave me hope, he replied. Jasmine nodded, considering his words. "I never thought about how powerful a conversation could be. It's like planting a seed, right? You never know how it might grow." "Exactly," David affirmed. "I think we can all play a part in helping others see things differently. It doesn't just stop with us. It's about creating a ripple effect in our communities." The next few days flew by in a blur of family dinners, laughter, and cherished moments that David had longed for during his deployment. Yet, as he settled back into his life, he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do more. The encounter with Leela had opened his eyes to the potential for change, and he felt compelled to act on it. One evening, David sat down at his desk and began to jot down ideas for a community workshop focused on conversations about race, bias, and understanding. He envisioned a space where people from different backgrounds could come together, share their experiences, and foster empathy. His heart raced at the thought of bringing people together in such a meaningful way. In the days that followed, he reached out to local community leaders, educators, and friends, sharing his vision for the workshop. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Many were eager to join him in promoting this initiative. He secured a local community center as a venue and set a date for the workshop, eager to make it a reality. Meanwhile, Leela had returned home as well, but her experience on the flight lingered like an uninvited guest. She had expected to brush off the incident, but instead, it had compelled her to delve deeper into her own beliefs. The discomfort she had felt was not fading. It was intensifying, pushing her to confront the biases she had carried for so long. Back in her luxury apartment, Leela began to research topics related to race and privilege, diving into articles, books, and documentaries. Each resource opened her eyes to the systemic inequalities that existed in society, and she was shocked by the extent of her ignorance. The realization that her upbringing had shielded her from these truths weighed heavily on her conscience. One afternoon, while sipping her coffee and contemplating her next steps, Leela decided to reach out to David. After some deliberation, she found his contact information through a mutual connection from the flight. She took a deep breath, feeling nervous yet hopeful, as she typed out her message. "Hi David, it's Leela from the flight. I wanted to thank you for our conversation. It's made me reflect deeply on my beliefs and how I can work toward change. I'd love to learn more about your community workshop if you're willing to share the details. I think I want to be a part of this." Hitting send felt both liberating and terrifying. Lila knew she was stepping outside of her comfort zone, but for the first time, she felt a genuine desire to grow and learn. When David received Lila's message, a wave of surprise washed over him. He hadn't expected to hear from her again, let alone receive such a heartfelt message. He smiled as he read her words, feeling a sense of camaraderie. "Hi Lila, I'm glad to hear from you. I'd love to have you join the workshop. It's happening next Saturday at the community center. It would be great to have you there. We can learn from each other and share our experiences. Let me know if you have any questions." Sending the message felt like opening a door to new possibilities. David recognized that Layla was taking a step toward understanding, and he was more than willing to support her journey. As the workshop date approached, David poured his energy into preparing materials, outlining discussion points, and thinking about how to create a safe and inviting space for participants. He wanted to ensure that everyone felt comfortable sharing their stories without judgment. Finally, the day of the workshop arrived. As David set up the room, he felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Would people show up? Would they be willing to engage in the conversations he hoped to facilitate? As attendees began to filter in, David greeted them warmly, creating an atmosphere of openness. Leela arrived a bit later, her heart pounding as she stepped into the room. She had never participated in anything like this before, but she was determined to push through her apprehension. When David saw her, he approached with a warm smile. "I'm so glad you made it. Ready to dive in?" Leela nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "I am. Thank you for welcoming me." The workshop commenced with introductions, and David encouraged everyone to share their names and why they were there. It was a simple icebreaker, but as the participants spoke, Leela found herself captivated by the diverse stories that unfolded. Some shared personal experiences of discrimination, while others spoke of their journeys of self-discovery. Lila listened intently, realizing how much she had yet to learn. The atmosphere was charged with vulnerability and honesty, each person contributing to a collective narrative of resilience. As the discussions progressed, David facilitated conversations around biases, stereotypes, and the importance of empathy. He encouraged participants to share their thoughts, emphasizing that no perspective was too small or insignificant. Leela found herself opening up, sharing her initial reaction to David on the flight and her ongoing journey to challenge her preconceived notions. "I realized that I've been living in a bubble," Leela admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I never truly questioned the privileges I've had. Meeting David changed that for me." A murmur of understanding rippled through the room as other participants nodded in agreement. They shared their own moments of awakening, revealing that they too had experienced shifts in their understanding of race and identity. As the workshop continued, Leela felt a growing sense of connection with the other participants. They were all navigating their own journeys, grappling with the complexities of their beliefs and the world around them. It was inspiring to see how one incident had sparked a collective desire for change. As the session came to a close, David opened the floor for final thoughts. "I want to thank each of you for being so open and honest today. Conversations like these are crucial for understanding each other better. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every step counts." Leela looked around the room, feeling a swell of gratitude. "I never expected to be part of something so transformative. Thank you, David, for creating this space. I feel empowered to continue this journey." David smiled, proud of what they had accomplished together. "This is just the beginning, Leela. We can all make a difference, one conversation at a time." As participants began to leave, Leela lingered behind, wanting to speak with David alone. She approached him, her heart racing. "I can't thank you enough for today. I feel like I've taken a huge step forward." David nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I'm glad you found value in it. Your willingness to learn and grow is inspiring." Leela hesitated, then said, "I want to help. I want to be part of this movement for change." David's eyes lit up. "That's fantastic. I would love your support for future workshops. We can create a platform for dialogue in our community." As they exchanged ideas, Leela felt a sense of purpose awaken within her. She realized that she wanted to be more than just a passive participant. She wanted to actively contribute to fostering understanding and breaking down barriers. In the weeks that followed, David and Leela worked closely together, planning additional workshops and outreach events. They reached out to schools, community centers, and local organizations, spreading the message of empathy and understanding. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and soon their initiative began to gain momentum. Participants began to share their stories online, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond their community. Lila was amazed at how her simple decision to reach out to David had blossomed into something so much larger. They were not just creating conversations, they were igniting a movement that inspired others to take action. As they watched the impact grow, David and Leela recognized that they were part of something profound. The journey had transformed them both, challenging their perspectives and igniting a passion for advocacy and change. And as they stood together at the next workshop, surrounded by eager participants, they understood that the true power of their encounter was not just in their individual stories, but in the connections they fostered and the collective journey they embarked upon together. This was just the beginning. The ripples of their actions would continue to spread, touching lives and fostering understanding in ways they could never have imagined. David and Leela were determined to keep the momentum going, committed to creating spaces where conversations could flourish and change could take root. The future was uncertain, but together they felt ready to face it, one conversation at a time. Seeds of change. The weeks turned into months, and the workshop series David and Leela organized gained a steady following. They had successfully built a community dedicated to fostering dialogue around race, identity, and the importance of empathy. As the attendance grew, so did the depth of the conversations. People from various backgrounds came together, sharing their stories and experiences, while forging connections that transcended race and class. One evening, as they prepared for their monthly workshop, David reflected on how far they had come. He and Leela had created a safe space that encouraged vulnerability, introspection, and growth. The enthusiasm in the air was palpable as participants gathered, eager to share their thoughts and listen to one another. "Tonight, I want us to focus on the concept of privilege," David announced as he opened the session. Privilege can often be a difficult thing to discuss, but it's essential for understanding how different experiences shape our lives. Leela stood beside him, her heart racing with anticipation. "It's not about guilt or shame," she added. "It's about awareness, and using that awareness to help others. Understanding privilege allows us to see the world through different lenses." As David facilitated the discussion, he noticed the diverse range of reactions from participants. Some expressed discomfort, while others eagerly shared their insights. One participant, a young woman named Maya, spoke up passionately. "I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I never realized how much privilege I had until I started to see the world through my friends' eyes, who faced discrimination daily. It was a wake-up call for me." The conversation flowed, with participants sharing their own experiences and challenging each other's perceptions. David and Leela moved around the room, encouraging dialogue and drawing connections between the stories being shared. They created smaller breakout groups to facilitate more intimate conversations, where participants could feel safe to express their thoughts without judgment. As the workshop progressed, David felt a sense of pride swell within him. He knew that the work they were doing was crucial for fostering understanding and acceptance in their community. The conversations they were having were planting seeds of change, and he was determined to nurture them. After the workshop concluded, Leela approached David, excitement evident in her eyes. "Did you see how engaged everyone was tonight? People are truly starting to connect. We need to keep building on this momentum." David nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Absolutely. I was thinking we should host a community event, something bigger where we can invite local leaders and organizations to join in. It could be an opportunity to discuss these issues on a larger scale." Leela's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "That's a fantastic idea. We could invite speakers, have panels, and even create a space for art and expression. It could be a festival of sorts, focusing on unity and understanding." As they brainstormed, the excitement in the air was infectious. They quickly began planning, reaching out to local organizations, artists, and speakers who could contribute to the event. The vision was to create a day where everyone could come together, celebrate their differences, and engage in meaningful dialogue. In the following weeks, the community event began to take shape. David and Leela poured their energy into every detail, ensuring that it would be a day of inspiration and empowerment. They secured a venue in a local park, enlisted volunteers to help manage logistics, and spread the word through social media and local news outlets. As the day of the event approached, anticipation filled the air. David and Leela couldn't believe how much support they had garnered from the community. The excitement was palpable, and the response had far exceeded their expectations. People were eager to participate, ready to come together and engage in conversations about understanding and change. On the day of the event, the park buzzed with activity. Colorful banners adorned the entrance, and the smell of food wafted through the air as local vendors set up their stalls. The stage was decorated with flowers, and a diverse lineup of speakers prepared to share their stories and insights. As people began to arrive, David and Leela welcomed them with open arms. They had created a vibrant atmosphere filled with music, laughter, and the spirit of unity. Attendees mingled, exchanging stories and ideas, and the energy in the park was infectious. "Look at how many people showed up," Leela exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. "This is incredible." David nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "I knew our community was ready for this. They want to engage in these conversations." As the event kicked off, David took the stage, addressing the crowd with a mixture of excitement and gratitude. "Thank you all for being here today. What started as a conversation on a flight has grown into something much bigger than we ever imagined. Today is about celebrating our differences and recognizing that our stories matter. Together, we can create change." The audience erupted into applause, and David felt a surge of energy as he introduced the first speaker, a local activist who had dedicated her life to promoting racial equality and social justice. As the day unfolded, attendees listened intently to the speaker's stories, each one resonating deeply and inspiring reflection. After the speeches, David and Leela facilitated interactive workshops where participants could share their thoughts and engage in discussions around the themes presented. They created spaces for art, allowing attendees to express their feelings through creativity. People painted, wrote poetry, and shared their artwork, contributing to a tapestry of stories that reflected the community's journey toward understanding. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Leela approached David, her eyes shining with joy. "This is amazing. I can't believe how powerful today has been. People are genuinely connecting." David smiled, proud of the impact they had made. "It's just the beginning, Leela. We've created a foundation for dialogue that can continue long after today. This is about building relationships and encouraging empathy in our community." As the event concluded, people lingered in the park, reluctant to leave the connections they had forged. The conversations continued, echoing the spirit of understanding and unity that had permeated the day. David and Leela moved through the crowd, embracing participants and thanking them for their involvement. In the weeks that followed, the momentum from the event carried forward. Participants were eager to continue the dialogue, and David and Leela organized regular follow-up gatherings to keep the conversations alive. They explored new topics, inviting guest speakers to share their insights and experiences, and encouraged attendees to share their stories. As they built upon their success, David and Leela recognized the importance of ongoing engagement. They began collaborating with local schools to incorporate discussions about race and privilege into the curriculum, aiming to reach younger generations and instill the values of empathy and understanding early on. Leela, inspired by the impact they were making, proposed a mentorship program where community members could partner with local youth. The goal was to create opportunities for open dialogue and support, helping young people navigate their identities in a complex world. David enthusiastically supported the idea, and together they began recruiting mentors and participants. Through the mentorship program, they witnessed firsthand the transformative power of connection. Young participants were paired with mentors who guided them through discussions about their experiences, dreams, and challenges. The relationships formed were profound, fostering a sense of belonging and understanding. As the months rolled on, the workshops and mentorship program flourished, each session echoing with laughter, stories, and shared experiences. David and Leela had created a vibrant community dedicated to fostering empathy, understanding, and action. They had learned that change was not just a destination. It was a journey that required continual effort and engagement. One evening, as David and Leela reflected on the progress they had made, David turned to Leela and said, "I never could have imagined how much this journey would mean to us, or the impact we'd have on our community." Leela nodded, her voice filled with gratitude. "It's incredible, isn't it? It all started with one uncomfortable moment on that flight. I'm so grateful we took the time to connect and learn from each other." David smiled, recognizing the depth of their friendship and partnership. "We've built something beautiful together, and I truly believe we can inspire change far beyond our community." As they looked ahead, they felt a sense of purpose and commitment to continue their work. They understood that the journey was ongoing, filled with challenges and triumphs, but they were ready to face it together. The seeds of change they had planted were beginning to bloom, and they were determined to nurture them, knowing that each conversation could lead to transformation. Together, they stepped forward into the future, ready to embrace the possibilities and continue their mission of fostering understanding, one dialogue at a time. A ripple effect. As David and Leela continued their work, they became more than just facilitators of conversations. They evolved into advocates for social change within their community. Their commitment inspired others to join their cause, creating a diverse coalition of individuals dedicated to promoting empathy, understanding, and equity. People from all walks of life began to come together, united by a common goal: to break down barriers and build bridges. The mentorship program flourished, and word spread about the positive impact it was having on local youth. Schools began to approach David and Leela, expressing interest in incorporating their workshops into the curriculum. They recognized the importance of teaching students about race, privilege, and empathy early on, and David and Leela eagerly accepted the invitation to collaborate. One sunny afternoon, David and Leela arrived at Westwood High School, excited yet a bit apprehensive. This would be their first time working with high school students, and they wanted to ensure that their message resonated with this younger audience. The gymnasium was buzzing with energy as students filtered in, laughter and chatter filling the air. As they set up their materials, David turned to Leela. "Are you ready for this?" Leela smiled, though a hint of nervousness crept into her voice. "I think so. We've done this 100 times before, right? But it's a new crowd." "Exactly," David replied, feeling a mix of excitement and responsibility. "Let's engage them, challenge their thinking, and encourage them to share their stories." When the time came to address the students, David took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Welcome, everyone. We're here to talk about something important: how our backgrounds and experiences shape who we are and how we see the world. But more importantly, we want to hear from you." Leela joined him on stage, her enthusiasm evident. "This is not just about us talking at you. It's about creating a space where you can share your thoughts and experiences. We want this to be a dialogue." The students exchanged curious glances, their interest piqued. David began by sharing his own story, a brief account of his military service, and the lessons he had learned about compassion and understanding while serving alongside individuals from diverse backgrounds. He spoke candidly about the discrimination he had faced and the importance of addressing those issues in their community. Leela followed suit, recounting her own journey of realization. "I grew up in a privileged environment, but I didn't see the struggles that many people faced until I stepped outside of my comfort zone. It was uncomfortable at times, but it opened my eyes to the realities of others." As they shared their stories, David noticed the students becoming more engaged. Hands shot up, eager to contribute to the discussion. One young man, Jamal, stood up and shared his experiences navigating life as a black teenager. "I sometimes feel invisible at school, like my struggles don't matter. It's frustrating when people don't see the bigger picture." His honesty struck a chord with the audience. Others began to share their experiences. Some spoke about feeling marginalized due to their race or socioeconomic status, while others discussed their privilege and the responsibility that came with it. The gymnasium transformed into a space of raw vulnerability and empathy. The atmosphere buzzed with energy as students opened up, sharing stories that highlighted their struggles, fears, and triumphs. David and Leela moved among the groups, facilitating conversations and encouraging deeper reflections. At one point, a girl named Sarah, who had been quiet during most of the discussion, finally spoke up. "I want to help, but I don't know how. I've never really thought about privilege before. What can I do?" Leela smiled, recognizing the spark of curiosity and the desire to learn. "Great question, Sarah. Start by being aware of your own experiences and how they differ from those around you. Listen, learn, and engage in conversations like this. It's about being an ally and standing up for those who might not have a voice." David added, "And don't underestimate the power of small actions. Even talking to your friends about these topics can make a difference. Change begins with conversations, just like the one we're having today." The students' enthusiasm was infectious, and the momentum they had built was undeniable. As the session drew to a close, David and Leela encouraged the students to continue the dialogue, emphasizing that this was just the beginning of their journey toward understanding and change. As they packed up after the workshop, Leela turned to David, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Did you see how engaged they were? We sparked something in them today." David nodded, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. "This is why we do this. If we can reach just a few students and inspire them to think differently, we've made a difference." Weeks passed, and the outreach continued. The collaboration with Westwood High School led to more workshops, and David and Leela were invited to other schools throughout the district. Each session fostered connections, built bridges, and encouraged empathy among students, creating a ripple effect of change. In one of their sessions at Lincoln Middle School, a small group of students approached David and Leela with an idea. "We want to create a club," one girl named Emma said, her voice filled with determination. "A club that focuses on understanding and discussing these issues. We can hold meetings, plan events, and reach out to other schools." David and Leela were thrilled by the initiative. "Absolutely. We can help you set it up and provide resources. This is what it's all about, empowering young voices to lead the charge for change," David said, grinning at the enthusiasm radiating from the students. As the club began to take shape, students organized meetings, brainstormed initiatives, and planned events. They held discussions on topics such as intersectionality, privilege, and social justice, each meeting echoing with laughter, introspection, and a growing sense of community. David and Leela served as mentors, guiding the students in their efforts and celebrating their successes. One day, Emma approached David and Leela with an idea that took them by surprise. "We want to host a community forum, a place where students and adults can come together to talk about these issues openly. We can invite speakers, share our stories, and create a platform for dialogue." David felt a surge of pride as he listened to Emma's vision. "That's a fantastic idea. We can support you in making it happen. You're leading the way in creating a culture of understanding in your community. With David and Leela's support, the students organized the forum, reaching out to local leaders, community activists, and educators to participate. They created a schedule packed with engaging activities and discussions that encouraged dialogue and fostered connection. On the day of the forum, the school auditorium was filled with students, parents, and community members, all eager to participate in the conversations. As David took the stage to welcome everyone, he felt a mix of pride and excitement for the students who had taken the initiative to create this space. Today, we gather not just as individuals, but as a community committed to understanding one another, David said, his voice resonating in the room. It's about breaking down barriers, listening to each other's stories, and finding common ground. Leela joined him on stage, and together they introduced the various speakers, each bringing a unique perspective and experience to the forum. The audience was captivated, engaged in discussions that sparked reflection and growth. Throughout the day, attendees participated in breakout sessions, sharing their experiences and perspectives on privilege, race, and community. The conversations flowed freely, with laughter and tears intertwining as people connected on a deeper level. As the forum came to a close, David and Leela watched the students interact with attendees, their faces glowing with pride and accomplishment. They had taken the initiative to foster change in their community, and the impact was palpable. After the event, David pulled Emma and her fellow students aside, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You did an incredible job today. You've shown that your voices matter, and you have the power to create change." Emma beamed, her heart swelling with pride. "We couldn't have done it without your support. You believed in us." As they left the auditorium, Leela felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. "This is just the beginning, David. These students have the potential to create a movement that extends far beyond this community." David nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. "We've built something meaningful here, something that can inspire others to engage in these conversations. Change is happening, and it all started with one moment of vulnerability." In the weeks that followed, the momentum continued to build. The Students' Club flourished, organizing events that drew attention and participation from the wider community. They collaborated with local organizations, extending their reach and promoting the values of empathy and understanding. As David and Leela reflected on their journey, they recognized that the impact of their work had extended far beyond the initial confrontation on the airplane. They had ignited a movement, fostering connections and encouraging individuals to engage in meaningful conversations about race and privilege. Together, they had created a legacy of understanding, one that would continue to grow and evolve as more voices joined the chorus for change. David and Leela knew that their work was far from over. There were still many stories to share, conversations to be had, and lives to be touched. And as they prepared for the next chapter of their journey, they felt a renewed sense of purpose and commitment to their mission, empowering individuals, fostering understanding, and creating a world where everyone's voice could be heard. The legacy of change. Months had passed since the community forum, and the movement sparked by David and Leela continued to thrive. The student-led club had transformed into a powerful force for change, and their impact reached beyond the walls of the school. People were talking about the initiatives, and other schools were beginning to adopt similar programs inspired by what had taken root in their community. David and Leela spent countless hours volunteering alongside the students, guiding their efforts and providing support as they took ownership of their mission. They had become mentors, confidants, and allies to these passionate young people, and each day brought new opportunities to inspire and empower. One afternoon, David found himself at a local coffee shop, reviewing plans for an upcoming event the club was organizing. He was engrossed in his notes when he spotted Leela walking in, her face lit up with excitement. "David, you won't believe what just happened," she exclaimed as she approached the table. "What's going on?" David asked, intrigued. "We just got invited to speak at a regional youth summit," Leela replied, her eyes sparkling. They want us to present about the work we've been doing here and how other communities can implement similar programs. Wow, that's incredible, David said, grinning. We need to prepare the students for this. It's a fantastic opportunity to showcase their work and the impact they've made. Yes, and the summit will feature youth leaders from across the region. It's a chance for our students to network, learn from others, and share their stories, Leela added, her enthusiasm contagious. David and Leela quickly got to work, meeting with the student leaders to discuss the opportunity. The news was met with excitement and nervousness as the students realized they would be sharing their journey with a wider audience. Okay, everyone, David said, gathering the students together. This is a big moment for us. We'll need to plan what we want to say and how we want to present our story. We want to inspire others just as you've inspired our community. Over the next few weeks, the students poured their hearts into preparing for the summit. They met regularly, brainstorming ideas, practicing their speeches, and refining their presentation. David and Leela acted as facilitators, helping to guide their discussions and ensure everyone's voice was heard. As the day of the summit approached, the excitement in the air was palpable. The students decided to create a multimedia presentation showcasing their journey, including videos, testimonials, and photos from their events. They wanted to demonstrate the power of dialogue and the importance of understanding different perspectives. Finally, the day arrived, and the students piled into the bus, buzzing with energy and anticipation. David and Leela sat with them, offering words of encouragement as they traveled to the venue, a large conference center buzzing with activity. When they arrived, they were greeted by a diverse crowd of students, educators, and community leaders. The summit featured various workshops and panels, providing a platform for youth leaders to share their experiences and insights. David and Leela guided their students through the day, encouraging them to participate in discussions and connect with other attendees. As the time for their presentation drew near, the students gathered backstage, their excitement mingled with nerves. David looked around at the group, sensing their apprehension. Remember, this is your story. Share it with passion and authenticity. People will connect with you because you are speaking from your heart. When it was finally time to take the stage, the students walked out together, a wave of confidence washing over them. David and Leela stood off to the side, beaming with pride as they watched the young leaders step into the spotlight. Emma took the lead, stepping up to the microphone. Hi, everyone. We're so excited to be here today to share our story and the journey we've been on in our community. The audience erupted in applause, and Emma smiled, encouraged by the warm reception. A few months ago, we realized that conversations about race and privilege were essential. We created a club to foster understanding and empathy, and we want to share what we've learned. One by one, the students took turns sharing their experiences, reflecting on the challenges they had faced and the growth they had achieved. They spoke passionately about the workshops they organized, the forum they held, and the impact they had made on their peers. David watched with pride as each student spoke with conviction and authenticity. They were no longer the nervous teenagers he had met months earlier. They had transformed into confident leaders, sharing their stories with power and purpose. As the presentation drew to a close, Lila stepped forward, her heart swelling with pride. Thank you for listening to us. We believe that change starts with conversations. It's about understanding each other, learning from our differences, and standing together as a community. After the presentation, the audience erupted into applause. David and Leela felt an overwhelming sense of pride as they watched the students take their bows, their faces glowing with accomplishment. They had successfully shared their message, inspiring others to engage in similar dialogues within their own communities. The summit continued with discussions, workshops, and networking opportunities. The students were approached by attendees eager to learn more about their work and how they could implement similar initiatives in their own schools. The ripple effect of their efforts was becoming tangible, and David and Leela were thrilled to see the impact their students were having beyond their own community. As the day came to a close, David and Leela found themselves surrounded by a group of students, all buzzing with excitement. This was amazing. We met so many people who want to work with us. Emma exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. Leela smiled. You all did such an incredible job. Your passion and dedication were evident, and you inspired so many people today. Thank you for believing in us. Another student, Jamal, said, his voice filled with gratitude. We couldn't have done this without your support. David placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. You all have the power to create change. Remember that this is just the beginning. Continue to use your voices and keep pushing for understanding and empathy. As they wrapped up their day of the summit, David and Leela reflected on the journey they had taken together. What had started as a single moment of confrontation had blossomed into a powerful movement, inspiring countless individuals to engage in conversations about race, privilege, and empathy. Months turned into years, and David and Leela continued to work alongside the students, watching them grow into young leaders who would one day inspire the next generation. They developed lasting friendships and partnerships with community organizations, further amplifying their impact. One evening, as they gathered for a community event, David stood at the podium, addressing a crowd of friends, family, and supporters. Tonight, we celebrate not just our achievements, but the spirit of resilience and collaboration that has emerged from our work together. It's been incredible to see how our students have stepped up, sharing their stories and creating a culture of understanding within our community. The audience erupted into applause, and David felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Lila stood beside him, her heart full as she watched the students who had grown so much over the years. They had created a legacy of change, one that would continue to inspire future generations. As the night continued, the stories of their journey echoed through the room, and laughter and conversations filled the air. David and Leela exchanged smiles, knowing that they had forged something truly meaningful, a movement that would leave a lasting impact on their community and beyond. As they looked out at the crowd, they knew they had only scratched the surface of what was possible. The journey toward understanding, empathy, and equity was ongoing, and they were committed to continuing the work together, hand in hand. David and Leela stood side by side, reflecting on how far they had come and how their individual journeys had intertwined to create something beautiful and transformative. They had taken a moment of conflict and turned it into a force for good, and as they embraced the future, they knew that together they could continue to change lives, inspire hearts, and create a world where everyone felt seen, heard, and valued. And so, their story became a testament to the power of understanding, compassion, and the enduring impact of standing up for what is right. David, Leela, and their community stood united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that together they could overcome anything. Their journey of change and redemption was just beginning.